Welcome to Real Talk in the Face of Danger, a series by the Department of Emergency Management aimed to sensitize the Barbadian population on the importance of preparedness and safety measures they should implement before, during, and after disaster. I'm Crystal Hoyt, a multimedia journalist and your host for this series. Thanks for tuning in. Every year, countries, communities, and individuals are being affected by natural disasters. In 2020 and 2021, we've also had to live with the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we've seen the impact it has had on our lives and livelihoods, these things can cause a great deal of stress. Today, we're going to chat about the stress impact of natural disasters and this pandemic. Here with me is Franklyn, a certified wellness coach with expertise in stress management and time management. She's keen to help everyone make their well-being a priority. Franklyn is known for her passionate commitment to helping others have healthier and happier lives. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you, Crystal?
I'm great. So let's jump right into it. Tell me, what is stress?
So I'm glad you asked that question to start with, because it gives me a chance to explain that there are actually two main types of stress. We have good stress, which is also known as eustress, and we have bad stress, which is the one that we more commonly hear about. So with both of these, we may find some similar things. We may find that our heart is racing, but the difference is that with good stress, there's no major threat happening. It's just that excited rush we get when we're doing something competitive, like we're in a game or we're in a sport, and it's that rush that gives us that push to win or to succeed in life. Negative or acute stress, on the other hand, is something that affects the body negatively, just as you would imagine. And to explain that, I need to take us back to caveman days for a minute. So imagine you're in the wild and you looked around and you notice that there's a tiger eyeing you for dinner or lunch, whichever. So if you were in that scenario, Crystal, what would you do?
I definitely run.
Well, I think that's what anybody would do. So that is exactly what the body expects. And in order to help us do that, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in. We secrete hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And that's what gives us that emergency fuel and that energy to run faster than we would normally be able to run, to make sure that we can safely get away from that tiger. And this is what we call the stress response, or the fight or flight response. Now, in modern day life, obviously, we don't have a tiger chasing us, typically, but our sources of stress are, as you said, the current pandemic. It's a major source of stress for most people. So on an everyday basis, pandemic or pandemic not, many people have heavy workloads. Generally, people have less downtime. So these are some of the stressors in everyday life in the best case scenarios, and then the pandemic being a major stressor right now.
Agreed.
So I'm sure you can start to see how this will be a problem.
Yes, I could definitely see exactly where that could be a problem. What are the impacts of everyday stress on our health?
So if you think back to a time, let's say when you were blue vexed, you would typically feel something change in your body. Most people might feel more heated than usual. You might feel like the blood is rushing through your veins differently. And this is because in order to, again, thinking back to the tiger, in order to get away from that tiger, our body will divert energy and nutrients to our muscles to make our muscles work more efficiently. And our blood vessels will tend to narrow, so even our blood flow is redirected. The thing is that when we safely get away from that tiger, we typically are supposed to go back to what is called a rest and digest state. And this is where your parasympathetic nervous system takes over. So the sympathetic one is the one that activates when we have a stress response. And then when we're relaxed, we have the parasympathetic nervous system taking over. The problem with typical fast-paced life, and definitely a challenging time like this during the pandemic, is that we tend to have chronic stress. We feel like we're constantly on high alert. We're always expecting bad news. And our minds and our bodies go into what almost feels like panic mode, although you may not feel it consciously every day, but it tends to be there lurking just beneath the surface. And The thing is, this makes us susceptible to illness, which is exactly the opposite of what you want right now when illness is in the forefront and you want to stay as healthy as possible. So this is the major impact to really think about in the midst of a pandemic, which is centered around the possibility of illness. So this makes it even more critical for us to manage our stress. And just to mention some of the other things that typically will happen, high stress situations can make us age faster. We tend not to digest our food well, and that can create a whole host of other problems. And we also tend to store fat. So this can lead to obesity, which can also lead to high blood pressure, chronic diseases like diabetes and cancer. So these are major issues that we want to avoid in a time when, again, we want to stay truly, truly healthy. And then there's the everyday concept of what happens in a stressful situation. There's always the danger of getting into a downward spiral. So typically when you feel stressed, you want to reach for comfort food. And what is that comfort food? Junk food. Again, not good for your health. When you're feeling frustrated and fed up and stressed out, you tend not to feel like exercising. So again, you're not doing the things that would actually help to sustain your health or help to boost your health. And on that list can go.
Okay, so tell me some of the warning signs that Barbadians should be looking for in their body, in their moods.
Definitely. There are some warning signs that will vary from person to person, but there's some basic ones that have been seen across the board. You may not have all of these, but you may have at least one. If you're in a high stress situation and your body is really taking on that stress and you're not coming down and calming down to get into that rest and digest state. So since you mentioned mood, we can start there. One of the first ones that you will think of is that we tend to get irritable when we're stressed. You may find that you're snapping at people for no reason. So if you find that and you know within yourself, okay, this is unusual for me, you may want to pause and see what's going on that might be making you feel stressed either in that moment or in general. Another typical warning sign is that even if you get adequate hours of sleep, we're talking 7 hours or more, you may not feel rested when you wake up. Or you may not sleep well at all during the night. And then there's the feeling you may get in your stomach. So some people may have unexplained belly hurt or unexplained upset stomach on a regular basis, and you can't seem to find a specific cause for it. This may be an indication that you're really highly stressed. So in addition, your body creates more stomach acid or produces more stomach acid when you're stressed. And this can contribute to heartburn or acid reflux. And then there are those tension headaches that you may feel, usually towards the front of your forehead. And they're literally what they sound like, brought on by tension or stress. So we're not talking about the migraines that some people may get normally, but headaches that come on as a result of generally feeling really stressed. And finally, you may find that you have some weird aches and pains in your joints and muscles. So you may not have injured anything, you may not have sprained anything, but suddenly you find that you're having these weird aches and pains on a regular basis. So these are some of the things that might make you want to stop and just check what's going on in your life to see if there are any stressors that you can manage. And of course, we're going to talk about how you can manage those, but those are some of the main warning signs.
Okay, so we talked about the warning signs. Can you give advice to persons who feel overwhelmed during this time? I mean, we are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. We are seeing an increasing number of cases and deaths. We are working or studying from home. We are living in, very uncertain times. So what do you say to Barbadians who are feeling overwhelmed?
Well, the first thing I would say is to think about why you're worrying. Now, obviously, it is a worrying situation, but still, when you really think about the times when you worry, you'll probably notice that you're worrying either about something that has happened already in the past or something that you're anticipating that may or may not happen in the future. and you can't go back to change the past, and we have no control over what will happen in the future. So the main recommendation here is to just take it one moment at a time. Live in the present, enjoy the present, think of the things that you are grateful for. Because in the midst of everything, we have so many things to be thankful for. Every single individual has at least one thing, and I'm sure many more than that, to be thankful for. And just know that just as we've seen other things happen in our lives and in history, this too shall pass. Nothing stays exactly the same forever. So this current situation that we're going through will not stay the same forever. So there is always going to be light at the end of the tunnel. So we must remember to stay hopeful rather than being bogged down by worry. The second thing I want to mention is that change is hard for any human being. And we've gone through a lot of changes with this pandemic. So recognizing that typically human beings are creatures of comfort, we really should be, again, taking it one day at a time. And in doing that, make sure you're kind to yourself. Understand that changes will not be second nature immediately. You will feel uncomfortable. That's expected. You may feel out of sorts. So just know that you shouldn't be beating up yourself if you feel like that and being hard on yourself. Just take your time and be kind to yourself and understand that it's a process. So the emphasis there is on taking it one day at a time. And then there's news. So we are constantly inundated with everything that's going on with the pandemic and a whole lot of bad news. Obviously, we want to stay in touch with what's happening, but really you need to be conscious about the amount of news and the level of detail that you're taking in. If you can reduce your news intake to once or twice a day at the most, that would be ideal. Focus on looking at the headlines or listening for the most important points. Scan the newspaper if you're reading the newspaper. Get a sense of what's going on without necessarily getting bogged down in all the details unless there's some specific item that will directly affect your life. And obviously you need the details on that. And a part of minimizing exposure to bad news is also minimizing your time on social media. If you're going onto social media to look for a funny video, that's fine because that will help to relax you. But if you're looking at comments, and I include WhatsApp and social media, if you look at comments and everybody's thoughts on everything that's negative that's going on and on and on it goes, and you never get a chance, and that is again keeping your brain ticking with all of this bad news that is going to eventually overwhelm you. So just be very intentional about the amount of negative news that you're taking in every day. And many people are working from home. So we want to make sure that we keep our work and personal life separate as far as possible, or our study and personal life separate. So make sure you let your family members know when you settle down to work or study. Pretend that you are away at school or at the office, and you will take breaks as you should. So if they have anything to say to you or ask you, they can do that then. But in the time when you're sitting to work, that is generally a time where you prefer not to be disturbed unless you're actually taking a break. You should have a specific space to work. So not all of us have a home office or a study, but a desk, a corner of a table. And this is important for two reasons. One, we need to keep that space tidy and uncluttered, because that's the way to keep your mind uncluttered and to make sure you feel calm and peaceful when you sit down to work. It's also important to have that designated space so that when you finish working or you finish studying, and you should have a specific cutoff time, even though that may be difficult because we tend to have work overflowing, but generally there should be a cutoff time that you stick to, the same way you would schedule other things. You're making yourself and your personal life a priority. And when you get up from that space, separate from the times when you get up to take breaks, when you know that you've finished work, you've finished studying, you are signaling to your brain, this is the time to transition to personal life, to now have downtime, relax, do some things that we enjoy. And we can't leave out movement. So I'm not going to say exercise per se, although of course I would recommend exercise, but many people when they hear the word exercise think they have to go do the toughest workout. We're talking about the movement that your body needs on any given day. So this can simply be going for a walk, obviously within the protocols that are established. And if you go for a walk, the benefit is you get fresh air, which is fantastic. So either when you're outside in the fresh air or even when you're inside, the one major thing I would recommend is that you take time to take a deep breath, even if it's only for a moment. A long inhale and a long, slow exhale, and that will immediately calm you. That's something you can do throughout the day. So after you have finished working, you've finished studying, you're taking your deep breaths throughout the day, the next thing to think about is doing the things that you really enjoy. So again, plan ahead, think of what you really like, and make sure that you are able to do that when you're relaxing. Because that is what will bring you joy, will feel different from the other things that you had to do. And this is the perfect time to try something new. Try new recipes, go on YouTube, learn how to make something, whether it's food or something else. And the final point that I want to leave you with is that you also should stay connected with people whose company you enjoy. And note that I said people whose company you enjoy. So not just any and everybody, but again, being very intentional about it, thinking of the people that you really want to check in on, catch up with. You want to give them a call. You want to catch them on Zoom. Even if you can't see them in person, it's important to keep that human connection because we are social beings. So we need that. And if there's nothing else that you remember from what I've said in these points, the one thing that I will re-emphasize is the importance of taking a deep breath. That one moment that you take to slow down, just breathe in, breathe out slowly, that can do wonders. Your body cannot be stressed and relaxed at the same time. And that calming breath will immediately relax you. So that is a little trick that you can employ throughout your day, no matter what you're doing. And these are the things that we can control. We can't control what's happening with the pandemic, but these are some of the things that are definitely within our control. So hopefully that will help.
So informative. You've shared the warning signs, the symptoms, and the things we should be doing when feeling overwhelmed or stressed. Christine, thank you for joining me and sharing with me on today's podcast.
You're most welcome, Crystal. And I hope your listeners got some takeaways that they can implement in their own lives, because we really do have just this one life. It's precious. We need to take care of ourselves, and managing our stress levels is an important part of that.
Could not agree more. Well, thank you everyone for joining me on today's podcast, Real Talk in the Face of Danger.